Hey guys, this is Game Nate, and welcome to the very first episode of Community Rankings, and the very first video of 2022. This episode will be a Mario Kart episode of ranking every Mario Kart track based off the Community Ranking option in Tier List Maker. There are 48 tracks in the game, so I will be dividing the tracks up into the 6 tiers: S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. Each tier will have 8 different tracks in them, to make the tiers of equal size. I will be explaining why the community puts the track in that spot, and saying whether I agree or not, and why. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 48 in the start of F tier goes to N64 Toads Turnpike. This is a traffic track similar to Mushroom City or Moonview Highway. This track is hated by many because they made the traffic go so slow in this track that it is very easy to avoid the cars. I agree with this spot, because what makes traffic tracks fun is the difficulty, and tracks like Mushroom City and Moonview Highway have that. Number 47 goes to Gcn Dry Desert, which is a desert track. People generally don't like this track along with most desert tracks because they are considered boring. In my opinion, this track is very fun because there's a lot of interesting track design here and multiple fun shortcuts to perform. I honestly don't understand why people dislike this track so much. Number 46 is Gcn Baby Park. This track is known for its chaotic nature, which in all 3 versions of this track has split the community in half. Half the community loves this track, as it provides chaos no other Mario Kart track can provide, and the other half of the community hates it because it is annoying and the layout is literally just an oval. But as you can see here, the people that hate it outnumbered the people that love it. I am personally one of the people that hate it, so I do agree with this placement. Bone Dry Dunes takes the number 45 spot on this list, which is also a desert track. People hate this track for a similar reason as to Dry Desert, being that it is boring. And I still do not entirely agree. The track design is still decently interesting in my opinion, however it does not have many interesting shortcuts, so I prefer Dry Desert to this track. Number 44 goes to SNES Donut Plains 3. This track is once again hated on because it is boring, which makes sense as it comes from the very first Mario Kart game. While I do agree that the track design here is boring, this has some of the most interesting shortcuts in the game, so I find it to be very fun. If you couldn't tell already, I enjoy shortcuts more than most people. Number 43 is Gcn Sherbet Land, which is a snowy/ice track. Wow, people really don't like the Gcn tracks we made in this game. People don't like this track because it is slippery and easy to accidentally hit the Shy Guys and Freezies, which becomes annoying. While I would agree if this was the original version, this track is a lot less slippery and easier to control, and this version added a lot to the original, so I disagree. Gbhe Cheese Land takes the number 42 spot on this list. This is yet another desert track, but this time it's made of cheese. And this one is disliked because it is bland and slippery, which doesn't work well with the track design. I used to agree with this spot as the track design here is more bland than the first desert tracks I mentioned in my opinion. But this track has grown on me because it is fun to bag on this track, which means letting people pass you at the start of the race so you can get good items and catch up. And because of that strategy, I disagree with this placement. Number 41 on this list in the top of F tier goes to Water Park. People dislike this track simply because it is somewhat boring. There really isn't much to be said about it. And for those reasons, this is actually my least favorite track in this game. On top of what I've already said, this track could have been super cool as it's themed around a flooded theme park, but the slot was wasted on the second track of Mushroom Cup. Number 40 on this list in the bottom of D tier is DS Cheep Beach. This track is a huge improvement on the DS version because this version has underwater, but people still dislike this track just because it's kind of bland. And overall, I agree with that. Even though I can't stress how much worse this track is on the DS when touching the water slightly makes you lose all of your speed. Number 39 goes to Mario Circuit, which is another somewhat boring track. The anti-gravity is used well on this track, but there isn't really too much more to be said about this track. I once again agree with this placement, as it has a boring track design and the shortcuts in this track aren't really that interesting. I do enjoy the glider ramp at the end, however, because it has weird physics from the anti-gravity. Number 38 is Rainbow Road, which might be a bit of a surprise to you seeing a Rainbow Road so low on this list. But the general reason why people dislike this track is because it includes a space station, which kind of takes away from the fact of this track being a Rainbow Road. Honestly, I think this is a really stupid reason, and besides, this track has a very good design and a fun shroomless shortcut at the end. And I also honestly like how they're being creative with other Rainbow Roads this time, as GCN, DS, and Wii Rainbow Roads all felt very similar to each other. Ice Outpost takes the number 37 spot on this list. This is an ice track with the gimmick of the entire track having two different paths, the green and yellow paths. This track is generally disliked because they didn't do anything to make this track stand out with the gimmick, and it's kind of boring. However, I once again think it's underrated because you guessed it, it has some fun to perform shortcuts. Number 36 goes to SNES Rainbow Road, which is another Rainbow Road ranking in the D tier. This time it is because it's just kind of boring, as it is a Snes track and there are only 90-degree turns and a few rainbow thwomps that act the same as normal thwomps. That's about all this track has. This time I agree with this placement, as like the community thinks, it's just kind of boring. Number 35 is Super Bell Subway, which is based off of, you guessed it, a subway. No, not that subway. Anyways, this track is literally just an underground subway where you avoid the trains, trick off a few ramps, and it really isn't that much to this track. I'm not sure why, but even though this track is somewhat bland, I'd still argue it's a bit better than this. I don't know exactly why I like it, it's kind of boring and doesn't have any particularly great shortcuts. Mario Kart Stadium takes the number 34 spot on this list. This is the first track in the game, so most would expect this to be a mediocre track, but it's actually not that bad. It does a great job introducing the main gimmick of this game, anti-gravity, while not even being that bland or boring, surprisingly. I actually like this track a lot because even besides what I already mentioned, this track has some of the best shortcuts in the game. Number 33 on this list and the top of D tier is Shy Guy Falls. I'm excited to see this track I am surprised to see this track so low on this list, because I actually see it get a lot of love. If I had to guess, the reason why it's so low is just because people find tracks that we will talk about later in this video to be better than this one. I like this track a lot, and as it has a really fun track design and a really fun shroomless shortcut once you've learned how to do it. Number 32 on this list and the bottom of C tier is Wee Moo Moo Meadows. This track is multiple favorite tracks in the entire series for some weird reason, but as for most, this is kind of just an average track. Its track design is pretty bland, as there's some Monty moles and cows, but that's about it. I actually think this track was placed too high on this list, as it has no business being higher than tracks like Mario Kart Stadium and Shy Guy Falls. Number 31 on this list goes to Sweet Sweet Canyon. This entire track is based off a mountain, or I guess a canyon, full of sweets and sugar. This track design is actually pretty decent, but it is lacking in terms of shortcuts. Honestly, for being a Mushroom Cup track, this track is pretty good. Overall, I agree with this placement for this track because I really enjoy it, but there aren't too many tracks left I would put lower than this track. Number 30 is 3DS Piranha Plant Slide. This track is actually supposed to resemble 1-2 from the original Super Mario Bros. However, it has an entire flooded section and is very loosely based on that level. That track design is also really fun, as there's lots of rushing water and piranha plants, and even some Goombas to help represent the original level. Overall, I feel similar about this track to Sweet Sweet Canyon, so I only agree with this because I can't put it much higher. Dolphin Trolls takes the number 29 spot on this list. This track is purely good track design, with lots of points of interest, such as tricking off the pipes that have rushing water upwards, and tricking off of an eel. However, for some reason, there are a lot of people that consider this one of the worst tracks in the game, and I have no idea why. But more people that consider this track an average track in the game. If I haven't made it clear, I think this track is underrated. Number 28 goes to Gba Mario Circuit. You might be surprised to see a Mario Circuit track rank so high on this list, but allow me to explain. People really like the small change in this track that makes one turn anti-gravity, and that one turn is literally the only reason that this isn't being ranked in F tier by the community. I also like this track and agree with this ranking, but for a completely different reason, being unsurprisingly the shortcuts of this track. Number 27 is Swamp Ruins. This is one of the better Mushroom Cup tracks in any Mario Kart game. That is because this track has really good track design, with every part of the track having at least 1 or 2 points of interest. It also uses anti-gravity, gliders, and underwater, which are 3 of the gimmicks used in tracks in Mario Kart 7 and 8, which means this track does a good job representing this game. This track also has good shortcuts, so I agree with this placement. Grumble Volcano takes the number 26 spot on this list. This track literally takes place inside of a volcano, and its main gimmick is that over time the volcano erupts and parts of the tracks fall off. This is a very fun gimmick, and mix that with a great setting and some of the best visuals in the entire game, and a very fun track design, and you have a very good track. However, I do agree with this placement once again because there aren't many tracks left to put below this. Number 25 on this list and the top of C tier is Wario's Gold Mine. This track is based off of, you guessed it, a gold mine owned by Wario. People find the track design of this track to be overall fun, which is why they placed it so high. However, in my opinion, the highlight of this track on the Wii is the difficulty of the track. And both this game's physics and the anti-gravity added to this track ruins it. Overall, I think this track should be placed way lower than this. Number 24 on this list and the bottom of B tier is 3DS Neo Bowser City. This track has the community completely split, which makes it hilarious that this is literally the halfway point through this list. The track design is average, but the part that splits the community is the slipperiness. This track is very slippery, and overall it makes it the hardest track in the game. Some say it's annoying, and some say it makes it fun. I'm one of the people that enjoy this track a lot. Number 23 goes to Twisted Mansion. I'm honestly very surprised to see this track ranked so high, as I don't see a lot of love for it. This is a ghost house track, and the main complaint I hear for it is that it was unnecessary to add an underwater section to this track. And while I do agree, that isn't a big deal in my opinion. However, I am not huge about this track because the track design is fine at best and doesn't have many shortcuts. Number 22 is Dragon Driftway. This is one of the most unique tracks in the game, being inspired by Gbhe, which is a boss from Super Mario Galaxy 2. The track design itself is also very unique, being very curvy and just being very fun in general. It also has an extremely cool shortcut, being the gap jump thing, which is kind of similar to Mushroom Gorge's gap jump in Mario Kart Wii. I like this track even more than this list because of what I've already said. N64 Yoshi Valley takes the number 21 spot on this list. This track has a very unique main gimmick, being that the entire track can be completed in lots of different ways because of all the split paths. This is a very fun gimmick, and that is the main reason why people like this track so much. However, I actually prefer the original version because it doesn't tell you what place you're in, but this version is still very fun, and I think this track should be even higher. Number 20 goes to Excite Bike Arena. This track is based off the game Excite Bike for the NES. This track's main gimmick is that the track is different every time you play it. However, the entire track is just trick ramps and mud piles, and the 2 turns of this track never change, so the gimmick ends up being barely noticeable. In my opinion, this track is extremely overrated as it only has 2 turns, and the entire track is just ramps, making it kind of boring. Number 19 is Gcn Yoshi Circuit. This track's main gimmick is that it is shaped like a Yoshi, which is very unique and actually a very fun layout to drive. Most people would say this is all they have to say about this track. However, this track has a ton of shortcuts, all of which are very fun to pull off. This makes this track very chaotic, but not in the way that Baby Park is chaotic. Instead, it's chaotic because people are passing each other with speed items the entire race. And overall, that just makes this track feel amazing to me. And for those reasons, this is my 5th favorite track in the entire game. Bowser's Castle takes the number 18 spot on this list. The main reason people like this version of Bowser Castle so much is because they like the track design with the mechanical Bowser. However, in my opinion, they were very lazy with this Bowser's Castle, because besides the mechanical Bowser, there aren't too many points of interest, and the mechanical Bowser is also in Gcn Wii Bowser's Castles before it. I don't dislike this track, but it's overrated to me. Number 17 on this list in the top of B tier is DS Wario Stadium. This track changes a lot about the original version. The DS version was closer to Gcn Waluigi Stadium, which had a lot of ramps. However, this version shows more good track design, as the anti-gravity as well as underwater sections were used really well here. And the ramps are much more satisfying now since you can trick off of them. Overall, I agree with this placement. Number 16 on this list in the bottom of A tier is N64 Royal Raceway. You may be very surprised to see this track ranked so high, as the raceways are just the circuits of Mario Kart 64, and I'm surprised to see it this high also, but I can actually see why. The track design is pretty fun and satisfying to play, as well as this track having some really fun shortcuts. Personally, I wouldn't put it this high on the list, but I can see why the community did. Number 15 goes to Cloud Top Cruise. Believe it or not, this is actually the last Special Cup track to appear on this list, which is crazy because most of the time a Special Cup track gets in 2 of the top 3 most popular tracks of a Mario Kart game. This track was placed so high, however, because of its amazing track design. I also agree with this. And there's a really cool section in this track where you have to avoid getting electrocuted while trying to hit boost panels. Number 14 is N64 Rainbow Road. This track is a remake of the original 3D Rainbow Road, which has mixed opinions. However, this version is more universally liked. This is because the main 2 complaints about the original is that the track was long and boring, both of which were fixed. They made it only 1 lap and added anti-gravity, boost panels, and glider ramps to this track to make it more interesting. Unfortunately for me, this track has no shortcuts. Wildwoods takes the number 13 spot on this list. I was very surprised to see this track ranked so high, as I never see this track called someone's favorite in the game, which does not apply to the last 3 tracks that I've mentioned. However, this track does have very good track design, so I can see the placement. I would have used to think this track was way too high, but now I kind of agree because it reminds me of Wii Maple Treeway, which is my favorite Mario Kart track. Number 12 goes to Animal Crossing. A lot of people really like this track, however, I'm still surprised to see it ranked so high because there are some people that also hate this track, and I mean least favorite track in the entire game. This track is obviously based off of Animal Crossing, and its main gimmick is including 4 different seasons, being summer, winter, fall, and spring. I agree with this placement because this track also has a good track design. Number 11 is Gbhe Rainbow Road. Number 11 is Gbhe Ribbon Road. This track is known for getting one of the best remakes in Mario Kart history after being an average track in Super Circuit. And I couldn't agree more. This track is now based off of a kid's dream room with toys everywhere. This makes this track one of the best and most unique track designs in the entire game. On top of that, this track has some of the hardest and funnest intended shortcuts in the game. I agree with this placement. Toad Harbor takes the number 10 spot on this list. If you know anything Mario Kart related about me, you'd know that I am absolutely obsessed with this track. So let me give you the rundown. This track is based off of San Francisco, and it has towns throughout the track, along with lots of split paths, as well as some really fun shortcuts. The track design in this track is flawless. Like, literally I can't think of a single flaw in the track design. And mix that with the split paths and shortcuts this track has, and you get my 3rd favorite track in this game, and my 7th favorite track in the entire series. Anyways, I'll stop boring you guys to death and move on. Number 9 on this list and top of A tier is Mute City. This is the first of 2 tracks in this game to be based off of F-Zero, which is a really good theme, since it allows for a track with a lot more boost panels and things that'll make you go faster than most tracks. This track also uses the anti-gravity really well. It was very fun to do the main shortcut of this track shroomless, even though it is pretty hard. Overall, I agree with this spot. Number 8 on this list and bottom of S tier is 3DS Music Park. This is the first of 2 tracks in this game to be based off of musical instruments. This time you actually drive on different musical instruments like pianos, while there are other instruments above you in the setting, like violins. The crazy part about this is that they managed to do this all while having a really fun track design and including a really fun shortcut, so I definitely agree with this placement. Number 7 goes to 3DS DK Jungle. This track is based off of Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is an underrated gem that way too few people have played. Anyways, this track takes the enemies and level design from Donkey Kong Country Returns and converts it into a Mario Kart track. In my opinion, they should do things like this with more series, because think of how cool Kirby or Pokemon tracks similar to this could be. I agree with this placement. Number 6 is Sunshine Airport. This track is the Coconut Mall of this game, having an extremely unique theme. Except this time instead of a mall, it's an airport. This track makes perfect use for glider ramps in this track. On top of this, there are parts of this track where you literally drive in an airplane, which is really cool. So overall, the track design is really good and the track has the potential to be even higher if it had good shortcuts. Overall, I agree with this placement. DS Tick-Tock Clock takes the number 5 spot on this list. This track is based off the level in Super Mario 64 with the same name, except this time people don't find the level to be annoying, but instead really fun. The DS version was already really fun, but this version makes it even better with more interesting track design, as this time every part of the track has multiple points of interest. On top of everything I've already said, this track also has possibly my favorite shortcut in the entire game with that clock hand at the end of the track, and I find it to be fun because it was risky and difficult. This is my 4th favorite track in the game, so I agree with this. Number 4 goes to Electrodrome. I'm going to speedrun you guys hating me. 3, 2, 1, go. Electrodrome is extremely overrated. Time! World record, guys, let's go. Anyways, let's look at this track's layout. This track has 2 gliders, some anti-gravity, some piranha plants, and honestly, that's it. Share the theming of this track and visuals as well as the music are really good, but that means nothing when this track isn't even fun to play. Overall, in my opinion, this is one of the most overrated tracks in the entire series, and I would only give it a B tier at highest and C tier at lowest. Number 3 is Hyrule Circuit. Gotta love that foreshadowing on the DK Jungle segment, as now there's another track with a completely different franchise, different enemies, etc. This time the track is based off of The Legend of Zelda. Piranha plants are replaced with Deku Babas. Coins are replaced with rupees. Mix all this with a very good track design and a very fun shortcut, and you have overall one of the best tracks in the game. Big Blue takes the runner-up spot on this list. This is the other track based around F-Zero, this time being a one-lap track. This track also takes advantage of rushing water, which Mute City didn't do, which makes this track already better in my opinion. And then there's easily the best part about the entire track. That is this course, the shortcuts. And no, this time it's actually a popular opinion. This time it's not just me talking about how underrated some random off-road cut is. This track has easily the best shortcuts in the entire game, all of which require you getting airtime in this track's low gravity to do. This is my favorite track in the game, but number 1 is really good also. And the best track in the game, according to the community, is Mount Wario. This is another one lap track, this time taking place on a snowy mountain. In section 1, you go down an icy path on the mountain and have a really cool shroomless shortcut at the end. In section 2, you go across a cave and have to hit boost panels on the rushing water going a different direction than where you want to go. And in section 3, you go down the rest of the snowy mountain, which takes a lot of elements from DK Stuntman and Mario Kart Wii. This track definitely has the best track design in the entire game, and it's my second favorite track in this game, only under Big Blue. This track is also said to be one of the best tracks in the series, which I agree with. It is my sixth favorite track in the series. Anyways guys, that's all I have for this really long video. This was my longest video for around 8 months and my longest scripted video ever, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Anyways guys, this video is going to be done. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Bye bye.